I was about to silence my phone when the screen lit up with a new message. It was late, quiet, just past midnight, and I was half asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket I didn't remember grabbing. The kind of night where the weight of the day had already started peeling off my shoulders, and I wasn't in the mood for anything more than background noise from whatever was playing on the TV. I think it was a documentary about birds, or maybe whales. Doesn't matter. The message didn't have a name, just a number I didn't recognize and a photo attachment. No caption, no explanation, just the kind of mystery ping that usually turns out to be spam or a wrong number. Still, something in me said, check it. So I did, and I wish I hadn't. The photo loaded slowly, a moment of buffering that stretched longer than it should have. It wasn't high quality, blurry, probably taken with a phone that couldn't quite handle the lighting. But it didn't need to be crisp. The contents were unmistakable. A rooftop terrace. String lights zigzagged across the scene. Tables with half-finished cocktails and ashtrays that hadn't been emptied in hours. Someone strumming a guitar off to the left. Laughter caught mid-motion. It had that grainy, candid energy, the kind of scene that says, here's a moment you weren't meant to see. And then, like a magnet yanking my eyes toward it, there she was, Allison, hair up in that effortless way she always did when she didn't want to look like she tried. Wearing the green dress, the one I bought her for our anniversary last spring. The one she swore made her feel like a painting. She was sitting way too close to a man I didn't recognize. His arm was draped around her lower back, relaxed, as if it had every right to be there. She wasn't recoiling. She wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, she was leaning into him slightly, that lean you give someone when you're not just physically close but emotionally aligned. Her head was tilted toward his, her smile soft and unguarded. Not our usual we're a couple smile. Not the camera-ready 2-second grin we used for parties and family barbecues. This one was real, warm, familiar. My thumb trembled slightly as I zoomed in, as if the details might change if I looked closer. But no, the blur didn't soften the truth. It sharpened it. I didn't say anything, just stared. There was no timestamp, no tags, nothing that said where or when it was taken. But I didn't need metadata to tell me what I already knew in my gut. This wasn't a new photo. It was from the night before. She'd told me she had a post-shoot wrap party. It'll be quick, she'd said, already halfway into her heels. Just drinks with the team. No big deal. I didn't question it. I never really had reason to. We'd been together 5 years, married for 2. I'd always been the trusting one. The one who said, of course, when she made last-minute changes to her schedule. The one who reminded her to have fun, even when she seemed too tired to go. But now I was staring at a photo that didn't ask permission to exist. It didn't care about trust or history or the nights we'd spent planning our future. It just sat there, burning itself into my brain. The guy looked comfortable, confident. His posture said, this isn't new. Like this wasn't some fleeting moment caught in the rush of a party. It looked lived in, practiced. I didn't even notice she was out of the shower until the bathroom door creaked open behind me. Hey, she said casually, walking into the hallway in a towel. Her hair was wet and dripping, curling at the edges the way it always did. She stopped when she saw the look on my face. Not alarmed at first, more puzzled. What's wrong? She asked. I turned the screen toward her. The photo lit the hallway with a blue glow. I watched her expression change in slow motion, from confusion to recognition, to something that looked like carefully controlled panic. She didn't gasp. She didn't drop anything. Just shifted the towel a little tighter around herself and let out a short laugh. Like the whole thing was absurd. Oh my God, she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. Seriously. She stepped forward, peering at the screen. That's from last night. We were on the terrace after the shoot wrapped. Everyone was hanging out. That guy, that's Theo. He's in our creative department. He's touchy with everyone. Total flirt, but harmless. She paused, searching my face. Someone must have caught us mid-laugh or something. That arm thing, totally out of context. I didn't say anything. She kept going. Like maybe if she filled the silence fast enough, It wouldn't sink its claws into the space between us. God, Jake, I wish I'd known someone took that. I could have gotten ahead of it. You know how these things look. I nodded. Just once. Didn't say a word. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, still damp from the shower. Don't be mad, okay? She said, already walking toward the bedroom. Seriously, it looks worse than it was. But I wasn't mad. Not yet. I just stood there, thumb still resting on the edge of the photo. The screen had dimmed, but the image hadn't left. Not really. It stayed in my mind like a stain on glass. One you wipe again and again, but never quite get rid of. That night, we didn't talk about it again. She slipped into bed like it was any other Tuesday. Like she hadn't just handed me a riddle with no honest answer. And I lay next to her in silence, listening to her breathing settle into sleep, wondering how many times she'd told me something wasn't what it looked like, and how many times I'd believed her. The morning after the photo, everything looked the same but felt different. The sun still crept in through the blinds in those familiar gold slats. The coffee still brewed at 7 a.m. sharp. The playlist she liked still played on shuffle through the kitchen speakers. But beneath all that normal, something had shifted. And I think she felt it too, even if neither of us said a word about it. She was quieter that day. Not withdrawn, just dialed in, like someone playing a part with practiced ease. She asked how I slept, packed her gym bag like she always did, gave me a quick kiss before heading out the door. Nothing was out of place, except for everything. I told myself to let it go, to take her at her word. Maybe it really was nothing. Maybe Theo's arm was just a split-second snapsh *T. A bad angle, a joke I hadn't been there for. But that picture had burrowed into me. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I didn't. I didn't see guilt, or distance, or discomfort. I saw closeness. And that quiet closeness started replaying in my mind in a way I couldn't mute. For the first few days, I tried to push it down. I went to work, answered emails, nodded through meetings, smiled when coworkers asked about weekend plans. But underneath it all was this low, steady hum, like a warning tone in the back of my skull. And then, things started to add up. It began with her phone. She used to leave it face up, sometimes left it charging in the kitchen or forgotten on the nightstand. But now it was always face down, always locked, and always within reach, like it was a limb she couldn't afford to detach from. One night, I walked past her in the living room and caught a glimpse of a message lighting up the screen. Just initials. T.G. That's it. No name. No preview. Just those 2 letters. She noticed me looking and flipped it over in a heartbeat. Work thing, she said casually, sipping her wine. Campaign revisions. I nodded. Didn't ask. But the hum got louder. Then it was the passwords. Changed without a word. The streaming apps signed out on the shared TV. Her laptop now needed a new login. Even our smart thermostat asked for a new admin code. She told me she updated them because of a security breach at her office. IT told everyone to switch things up. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. But then came the late-night walks. She never used to go out after dark. Not by herself. Not without asking if I wanted to come. But now she'd suddenly need air around 10 p.m. Walks that lasted exactly 38 to 42 minutes. Always with her phone in hand. Always coming back with that oddly alert look. Like someone who had just stepped out of a conversation they couldn't tell you about. Once I offered to come with. She hesitated for a second too long. No offense, babe, she said, brushing me off. But I kinda need it to be just me time. So I let her go. Every time. But I started watching the clock when she left. I'd listen to the door click shut, then sit in silence, counting minutes. Sometimes I'd pace. Other times I'd just sit with the dog, trying to drown out the buzz in my head with the sound of her keys jangling as she returned. Her scent started to change, too. She'd walk past me, and I'd catch a whiff of something unfamiliar. Perfumes I didn't recognize. More floral than usual. Sometimes powdery. Sometimes a little too strong, like she'd put it on in a rush. I asked once. She said she was testing samples her coworker gave her. New brand launch, she told me. tossing a strip of scent paper on the kitchen counter. We're doing a campaign. You'll see the ads soon. But I never saw the ads. And the samples kept changing. It didn't feel like discovery. It felt like camouflage. Even the way she spoke shifted. She started talking about people I'd never heard of. Names tossed into conversations like I was supposed to know them. Raf said the campaign deadline moved up. Ellie and I are thinking of switching editing platforms. T said he might fly in from L.A. for the next shoot. I never asked for clarification. Maybe I should have. But it was the small moments that hit the hardest. Like when I'd make dinner and she'd be scrolling through her phone instead of setting the table like we used to. Or when I'd start a conversation and watch her eyes drift. Not rudely, but absently. Like her mind was in another room entirely. I began noticing how often her smiles felt recycled. Like she was performing affection, not offering it. She laughed at the same jokes, kissed me goodnight, asked how work was, but it all felt like background noise to whatever was pulling her away. And then came the creative projects. Suddenly, there were more of them. Late nights, early calls, last-minute shoots on weekends. I'd ask for details and get vague replies. It's just a freelance gig. Or we're prepping for a pitch. Or can't really explain it, NDA stuff. Once or twice, I offered to stop by during lunch. Bring coffee. She always said no. It's chaos, she'd say. You wouldn't survive 10 minutes in that office. Maybe she was right. But a small part of me started to wonder if the chaos was just an excuse. The day it really sunk in was when she missed our dinner reservation, our anniversary. We'd planned it weeks in advance. A place downtown she picked. Fancy, but not too much. A place with warm lights and soft jazz and wine that made us feel grown up. I was already seated at the table when she texted me. Running late. So sorry. Wrap party going long. Can't get away. Please don't be mad. Can we do tomorrow instead? I stared at the screen for a long time. Didn't text back. Just asked for the check and drove home. When she came in later that night, she smelled like champagne and tobacco and something earthy. Like rain-soaked concrete. I'm so sorry, she said, pressing her face into my shoulder. They surprised us with this whole rooftop setup. I couldn't slip out without it being weird. I nodded, said it was okay. But it wasn't, because she'd forgotten. Or at least remembered too late to care. From that point forward, it wasn't about overthinking anymore. It was pattern recognition. The inconsistencies weren't scattered. They were forming a constellation, a picture I didn't want to name but could no longer ignore. She'd started to disappear in plain sight, in the way her phone never left her hand, in the way she dressed differently, not always ***, just curated, intentional, like she was being seen by someone who made her feel seen, someone who wasn't me. I still slept beside her, still made coffee in the mornings, still watched her laugh at shows we used to love. But every time she touched me, it felt lighter, more performative, like she was trying to convince us both that nothing had changed. But it had. And as much as I wanted to believe I was just being paranoid, something deeper inside me had already crossed the threshold. That unspoken line between suspicion and knowing. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I had instinct. And it wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. I told myself I wouldn't turn into that guy. You know, the one, circling the block, checking her messages when she leaves the room, replaying conversations in his head like some half-mad conspiracy theorist. I always thought that kind of paranoia belonged to people who'd already lost the plot. People clinging to scraps. But when the world you've built starts to shift beneath your feet, all those judgments dissolve. I didn't plan to double back that day. It just happened. It was a Tuesday, a normal workday. She'd already left by the time I got up. She'd kissed me on the forehead and whispered, "See you tonight," like everything was fine. I ate toast, checked my email, slipped on a clean shirt. I even got in the car and pulled out of the driveway like I always did. But then something stopped me. A flicker of hesitation. A pause at the stop sign. Maybe it was the way she smiled before leaving. Too tight, too brief, like it had been pasted on. Or maybe it was just exhaustion. that slow-burning ache from months of unease that wouldn't let me breathe properly anymore. Whatever it was, I turned the car around. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she forgot something. Maybe I left the stove on. I just needed to go back. Just for a second. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was still there. That was the first crack. I sat in mine for a minute, engine humming, fingers drumming against the steering wheel. She hadn't taken an Uber. She hated them. Said they always smelled like citrus and regret. If she didn't drive, and she wasn't home, then where was she? The house was still. I unlocked the door quietly, listening for footsteps, music, the distant hum of a hair dryer. Anything that would explain the lie. But there was nothing. No sound. Just the scent of her lotion lingering in the air and a single coffee mug in the sink, still warm to the touch. I moved through the rooms one by one. Living room, kitchen, office, bedroom. Nothing. No signs of life. Just the eerie feeling that I was intruding on my own space. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. Again. No message. Just an address. No name. No explanation. No warning. Just an address I didn't know and coordinates that felt like bait. I stared at it for a long moment. My first instinct was to ignore it. Delete it. Pretend it was a glitch or a wrong number. But that old gut feeling, the one that had been muttering in the background for weeks, now had a megaphone. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. I got back in the car and drove. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't call her. Didn't even check the map until I was halfway there. The address was in a part of town we rarely visited. The arts district, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, cafes with no menus, studios behind unmarked doors. And then I saw it. The building was tall, modern, tucked behind a row of boutique shops. One of those sleek apartment complexes where everything looks polished but a little cold. I parked across the street, my hands sweating as I gripped the steering wheel. I didn't even have to go inside, because the truth was already staring back at me. The unit was on the third floor. The windows were wide, nearly wall-to-wall, and for a moment I stood there on the sidewalk, watching like someone outside their own body. I felt like a stranger with binoculars, an unwanted guest in someone else's life. Inside, she was sitting on a velvet couch, barefoot, legs curled underneath her, holding a coffee cup in both hands. She was wearing a shirt too big for her. Not hers. His. Theo. It was him. The same man from the rooftop photo. His hair was messy in that stylized, deliberate way. He stood in the open-plan kitchen pouring more coffee into her cup like they'd done this 100 times. And she smiled. Not nervously. Not guiltily. Not like someone worried she was being watched. She smiled the way people smile when they feel safe. Familiar. Home. I don't know how long I stood there. Time blurred. Cars passed. A cyclist yelled at me to move. But I didn't. I just watched the lie unfold in perfect, painful clarity. She laughed at something he said. He brushed her knee with the back of his hand as he sat beside her. They talked like the world outside didn't exist. Like I didn't exist. Like 5 years, 2 anniversaries, a shared mortgage, and a dog we rescued together were just a dream she'd woken up from. That was the moment. The exact second when doubt became certainty. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It wasn't anxiety or insecurity or paranoia. It was fact. Undeniable. Undebatable. The truth played out in real time behind that window, in a world I was never meant to see. I didn't knock. Didn't storm in. Didn't scream or cry or cause a scene. I just turned and walked back to the car, hands numb, chest hollowed out. The kind of quiet devastation that doesn't announce itself with noise. It just sinks in, slow and cold, like water leaking into drywall. On the way home, I didn't listen to music. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even know what to think. All I kept replaying was the way she looked in that shirt. Relaxed, effortless, like she belonged there. When I got back to the house, I sat in the driveway for a long time. The same place I'd started the morning. Felt like a full lifetime had passed in just a few hours. I still had a key to everything, the front door, her calendar, our shared bank account. But emotionally, I was already locked out. I didn't bring it up that night. She came home late, Smelled faintly of coffee and leather. Told me the shoot had run long. Client was being picky, she said, shrugging off her jacket. Everyone was exhausted. I watched her lie with ease. No tremble in her voice. No flicker of guilt. I nodded, smiled, asked if she wanted dinner. She said no, she was too tired. She went to bed early. And I just sat there in the living room, staring at the television without seeing anything, letting her fake sleep while I stared at the ceiling fan and wondered what else I'd missed. I didn't confront her. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need her version anymore. I'd already seen the truth with my own eyes. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. She vanished the next morning. No warning. No packed suitcase. No dramatic exit. Just gone. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her work email bounced back with an automated message. Out of office until further notice. No note left behind. No text. No apology. Not even a final lie. She left her jacket on the hook by the door and a half-full LaCroix can on the kitchen counter. At first, I didn't even realize she was gone. I assumed she left early for work again. One of her chaotic, caffeine-fueled mornings where she barely said goodbye. I waited until around noon to call her. Just something simple. Something casual. Probably out of habit more than concern. No answer. I tried again an hour later. Then I texted, "Hey, everything okay?" The message delivered, but no reply. 3 dots flashed for a second, then disappeared. By evening, the silence had grown too loud to ignore. I called her sister. "Have you heard from Allison today?" A long pause. "Not since yesterday." "Why?" I called her office. A receptionist with a rehearsed tone told me, "Allison is on leave for a bit. Not sure when she'll be back." Leave? That was the first time I realized this wasn't spontaneous. It had been planned. Coordinated. Only I'd been left out of the plan. The next morning, I opened her drawer and found the essentials still there. Her passport, her work badge, her favorite hoodie with the paint stain on the sleeve. But her laptop was missing. So was her old journal, the one she hadn't touched in months. A pair of boots she rarely wore were gone. The reusable canvas tote bag she used for weekend errands. Gone too. I didn't call the police. What would I even say? "Hi. My wife left without telling me after I caught her mid-affair. Could you help me track her down?" No, I didn't want her found. I wanted her forgotten. So I got to work. I cleaned out the closet. Boxed up her heels, her scarves, her unread stack of fiction novels. I tossed her fancy haircare products into a bin. Changed the passwords on everything we'd ever shared. Netflix, Hulu, our electric bill. I even reprogrammed the thermostat to stop adjusting to her preferences. That first night without her was strange. Not sad, not painful, just still. Like the house had been exorcised of some invisible chaos. I stood in the middle of the bedroom, the same place I'd slept next to her for years, and felt space return. Real space. Breathing room. I ordered pizza. Watched a documentary. Slept like I hadn't in months. The next day, I started labeling boxes. Allison, miscellaneous. Books, hers. Kitchen stuff she won't miss. By day 5, I stopped expecting her to call. By day 10, I took down the framed photo of us from the hallway. By day 14, I stopped checking her Instagram. By day 21, she became a ghost I didn't miss. And then she came back. No knock. No call ahead. No warning. Just a key in the door and the sound of grocery bags rustling as she walked into the house like she'd been gone an hour. Not 3 weeks. "Hey!" she said, breezing in like nothing had happened. "I grabbed that Sauvignon Blanc you like." I was in the kitchen, cutting up carrots. I turned slowly, not quite sure if I was awake or dreaming. She stood there in sunglasses and a denim jacket, smiling like it was any other Thursday. She walked over to the counter, placed the wine down, and started unloading the bag. Grapes, almonds, manchego, a baguette, everything we used to eat on movie nights. She glanced up. "You okay?" I couldn't speak. Not right away. My body hadn't caught up to the moment. It was like watching someone return from the dead and ask what's for dinner. She looked around the kitchen like she was searching for something. Where's the blue vase? The tall one we kept by the window? In the garage, I said flatly. With the rest of your things. She blinked, finally pausing. The casual tone dropped for just a second. Oh. We stood there, her on one side of the island, me on the other. The same layout we'd lived in for years, now suddenly unfamiliar. You rearranged the bookshelf, she said, eyes scanning the living room. Looks good. I stared at her hair pulled back in that familiar loose knot, at the small scar above her eyebrow, at the face I'd memorized and no longer wanted to see. I thought you weren't coming back, I said. She gave a small shrug. I needed time. Time, I repeated. Yeah, I didn't want to make it worse by staying. I figured space would help. I almost laughed. Help what, exactly? She opened her mouth, closed it again, swallowed hard. I didn't know how to face you. I nodded slowly. That, at least, was honest. She walked past me toward the living room, set her purse down on the coffee table. The same coffee table we once built together out of reclaimed wood from a flea market. I remember sanding it on the patio while she played music from her phone. She looked around, absorbing the room like it was a museum exhibit. This place looks different without me. It is different. Another long pause. Then, I thought about writing you. You didn't. She nodded. I couldn't find the words. Now I laughed. That's never been your problem, Allison. She flinched, just barely, but I saw it. The silence stretched. She stood there, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, like she wasn't sure if she belonged or was waiting to be told to leave. Can we sit? She asked. I didn't answer. She took it as a yes and sat on the couch, tucking one leg underneath her, just like before, like old times. Except now, the space beside her wasn't hers anymore. Not emotionally. Not spiritually, just geography. She looked up at me, eyes wide, voice quieter. Jake? Can we talk? Jake? Can we talk? The words hung there between us, floating in a space I no longer felt responsible for filling. I didn't sit, just leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, watching her closely. Not with anger. Not anymore. That part had already burned itself out. What I felt now was something quieter, heavier, like standing in the rubble after the fire, not even sure what used to be where. She took a breath. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, twisting the silver ring on her middle finger, the one I gave her at the coast 2 summers ago, when we spent a weekend in a cabin with no signal, no clocks, no shoes. I know, she started. I know how this must look. I know what it must feel like. I said nothing. Just let her try. I didn't mean for things to go the way they did. I didn't set out to betray you. Still, I said nothing. Her eyes searched my face like she was trying to find a trace of the man who used to smile at her from across the dinner table. But that version of me had packed up the day she disappeared. It wasn't a plan. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was lost. That's the only word I can think of. Lost. That word made me flinch internally. How convenient, how passive. As if love were some remote trail you could accidentally wander off and into someone else's arms. I thought I needed clarity, she continued. I thought I needed space, but all it did was make things worse. Being away made me realize what I had, what I risked. She paused, expecting me to jump in. I didn't, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I'd already said all of it to myself during those 21 days. She looked around the room, eyes pausing at the bookshelf, the empty space on the wall where our anniversary photo used to hang. You moved the photo, she said softly. Yeah. Her voice cracked. I get it. I probably do the same. Silence again. The kind that isn't heavy because of emotion, but hollow because everything worth saying has already been said elsewhere. Behind closed doors, in empty rooms, in long walks around the neighborhood with no destination. Finally, I pushed off the counter and walked to the garage, opened it, pulled the tarp off the stack of boxes with her name scrawled across the sides in thick black Sharpie. When I came back inside, she was standing, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Your stuff's in the garage. I said, voice calm. Even. She nodded. Swallowed. You already packed me up. I didn't think you'd be back. I wasn't sure I would be either, she admitted. But then I couldn't stop thinking about you. About us. About what we had. I raised an eyebrow. Had is the right word. She winced. Took a step forward. Jake, please don't do this. Don't shut me out. I didn't move. You left. Without a word. Without a plan. You didn't just disappear, you ghosted your own life. I know, she whispered, voice strained. I panicked. Everything was so heavy. I didn't know how to fix it. You didn't want to fix it, I said, harsher now. You wanted a way out that didn't make you look like the villain. That's not true. You didn't even have the decency to lie properly, Allison. You just vanished. She covered her face for a moment, fingers trembling. I was overwhelmed. The guilt, the confusion. I couldn't look you in the eye. I kept thinking I'd just make it worse if I stayed. You made it worse by leaving, I said. You made it permanent. Her eyes filled with tears. Not loud, sobbing ones. Just silent, glassy grief that she didn't even try to blink away. I know you probably hate me, she said. I don't, I replied. It's not hate. Then what is it? I looked at her carefully, measured the weight of what I was about to say. It's indifference. UK asterisk led something in me, Allison. And now I don't want it back. She took a shaky breath. You don't mean that. I do. But we can rebuild. There is no we. She stepped forward again. Closer now. Enough for me to smell the faint scent of whatever new perfume she'd replaced the old one with. I made a mistake, she said, pleading now. One huge, reckless mistake. But I see it now. I see what I threw away. You didn't throw it away, I corrected. You torched it. And then you stood there and watched it burn. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her voice cracked around the next sentence. I've been in therapy. Every day since I left. That's good, I said flatly. Keep going. I want to get better, she said. Not just for you. For me. I know I messed up, but I'm not beyond saving. No one said you were. Then give me a chance, she whispered. Please, Jake. I'll do anything. I let out a slow breath and finally sat down in the armchair. The one I used to read in while she'd fall asleep on the couch. Legs draped over mine. I sat there, looked her in the eye and said what needed to be said. Allison, I believe you're sorry. I do. And maybe you will get better. Maybe you'll rebuild your life into something you're proud of. But it won't be with me. She bit her lip hard, like she was trying to physically keep the emotion in. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. I've just moved on. Emotionally. Mentally. I can't go backward. I don't want to. You're saying there's nothing left? There's memory, I said. But no future. She looked like she wanted to argue, to beg. But she didn't. She sat down on the edge of the couch, hands in her lap, silent for a long time. I miss the way we used to be, she said eventually. So do I said. But we're not those people anymore. The wine bottle sat untouched on the counter. The cheese, the grapes, the bread, all laid out like a script from a night we could have had once, in another version of our life. She stood slowly. I guess I should go. I nodded. She picked up her bag, walked to the door, turned around one last time. Can I call you sometime? Just to talk? I looked at her for a long moment, then shook my head. I don't think that's a good idea. She nodded, eyes blinking fast, holding it in. I loved you, she said quietly. I didn't answer. She opened the door, paused. I hope you find peace, Jake. I already have. And with that, she walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. This time, she didn't take the wine.